everyone, so I'm here today to share 3 cards that I made using Simon Says Stamps September 2018 Sea Treasure card kit. But before we get into the cards, let's take a look at the contents of the kit. This is some really pretty mermaid sparkly embossing powder included in the kit. There's some aqua glitter paper, some specialty paper from Tonic in Deep Sea Dive. That's the paper I'm holding up here. It's very pliable and flexible. So at some points when I use it, I will back it with a piece of cardstock just so that it maintains its shape. Here is the 6x8 stamp set that comes with the kit. It's called Beautiful Mermaids, and there are 3 lovely mermaids in different poses and a whole bunch of little fish and oysters and a treasure chest and some great sayings. So you can make a lot of different cards with this one kit. Let's get started with card number 1. So for card number 1, we're going to start by coloring in her skin. Whenever I color a character, I always will color in the skin first, and the reason for that is so that it's less likely, I find, that the colors around the skin will bleed into the skin if I do the skin first, if that makes sense. And then I usually will next do the hair of a character before going on to fill in the body. And here I'm using my favorite colors to make auburn, like a cross between an auburn and a chestnut hair. And those colors are E15, E29, and E09. And I just kind of flick my pen around just to get some nice variations in color for the hair. For the mermaid tail and the bikini top, the colors are in the upper right-hand corner. And I guess the technique that I'm using here is I'm just trying to create some different variations in color. So on the top of the tail, that part is a little bit more shadowed. The fin itself, I tried to keep the center of it lighter. And then for the bra, I kept the top of the bra a little bit darker and shaded and the bottom lighter. Just adding some details with a white gel pen to make it look like she has a little headband of pearls on top of her hair. And then some just little interesting white dots so that the image doesn't look so flat. I'm using one of the stamps in the kit. I think this is like some kind of seagrass or seaweed, and I'm using the embossing ink, or the watermark ink that's included in the kit, and the mermaid embossing powder to just make some designs on the bottom and the top of the card base. And now I'm just going to fill in the background with the 2 distressed oxide inks that are in the kit, Stormy, Sea, and then Tumbled Glass. And I'm doing this on Neenah cardstock, so the blend isn't that great, and I'm not that great at blending anyway because I'm impatient. But it doesn't matter because I just want it to kind of look like, there are some like variations in color because we're going to be looking into the ocean. So the ocean isn't perfect. There's lots of little spots and bubbles and whatnot, and so that's what I was going for. We're going to make this a shaker card, so I'm just taking a frame die by Lawn Fawn, and then I put some acetate on the back. And here this panel is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it just bothered me that the edge didn't look clean, so I just went over that with another Lawn Fawn die just to give it a cleaner edge and some stitching around the edge. I'm just now trying to figure out where I want to place my shaker, and I decided to go towards the bottom of the card instead of having it centered perfectly. I'm going to put in the little treasure chest in the lower right hand corner, and then some doubled up foam tape along the edges of the background. And that's because we're going to put the scalloped frame on top of this in a second, and we don't want any of the foam tape to poke through or show through. So I'm going to use the little gold coin sequins in the kit, and I'm trying to use as few as possible because I love them and I want to use them for other things. And now I'm just attaching the top of the frame, and then we're going to put the mermaid on top of that, so she's actually on the outside instead of being part of the scene on the inside. I'm going to let her tail hang off a little bit on the edge just to make the scene look a little bit more interesting, and check to make sure that the shaker is working okay, and it is. So now we're going to go on to the sentiment, and the sentiment I'm using says "See treasure in the little things," and I'm going to use some gold embossing powder to color in the sentiment. Then we're going to heat set it, and then I thought it would be cool to use some of the Distress Oxide ink over the black paper. And then I decided that the sentiment was too big, so I cut it down and then reapplied the Distress Oxide ink, and then wiped off the excess ink that was on top of the words just so that they'd be nice and clear. So I just used some foam tape to pop up the sentiment, and then I decided that the scene needed a couple of bubbles. So I'm going to use these little clear jewel drops. I think they're by Studio Katya that I got a while ago. And the set I have has 3 different sizes, so I'm going to use all those sizes and just create some bubbles in the upper right hand corner and then in the bottom lower corner. And this is a good way if you have like any mistakes in your embossing. You could just cover them up with like a Nouveau drop or one of these little crystal drops, and no one will ever be the wiser. Okay, so I think she looks cute. The shaker mechanism is working okay, so it looks like the little gold coins are all on the bottom of the ocean, and you can shake them up every which way, and there you have it. Okay, so let's move on to the second card. And for the second card, we're going to do an underwater scene with Copic markers. And this is going to be a pretty simple scene that we're making. If you want to make a more complicated scene with some more objects in the background, I would urge you to try Sandy Allnock's online underwater class. And it teaches you how to make 5 different types of underwater scenes with Copic markers. I think it's only about $14 or $15, and you know, I've taken the class, I've taken all 5 lessons, and I had a great time, and I feel like it's definitely improved my Copic coloring, so I highly recommend it. In any event, let's get back to the picture at hand. So I added all the colors in the upper right hand corner again, so you can get a sense of what the colors are that I'm using for the bottom of the ocean, and then the water, and then the light that is kind of flowing through the water. And here what I'm doing is I was just trying to blend the water into the background a little bit, just so that it wasn't such a stark line at the bottom, like between the ground and then the actual water. For her skin, because we're underwater and because it's a pretty dark scene, I thought that her skin should be darker as well. For the rock underneath her, we're going to use some E40, some colors in the E40 range. And then for her tail, I tried to do something a little bit different from the previous mermaid and use some BG40, some Copic markers in the BG40s. For her hair, we're going to just make her blonde, and I'm still at a point where I don't know that I have a really good color combination to make realistic blonde hair yet. That's something I definitely have to practice. But this is kind of where I am right now. It's a little simple, but you know, I think as time goes on and I keep drawing blondes, we'll get some more depth into the blonde hair. For the bubbles, making bubbles is so much fun. You basically take your colorless blender and just press it into the page, and then I go a step further to give the bubbles a little bit more depth, and I will go over, I'll add some color on the inside of the bubble. Some will have a dark color, some will have a light color, and then I'll go over it again with a colorless blender. And I found that that really makes the bubbles pop off the page when you do it that way. And then I'll also add some details with a white gel pen just to enhance the light effect that we have coming from the upper right hand corner of the picture, and then also some little white dots just to make it look like they're tiny little frothy foamy bubbles. Now we're going to add the sentiment. I use VersaFine ink for that, black VersaFine ink, and then put some clear embossing powder over it and heat set it, and there you have it. So for a final touch, I'm just going to add some glitter pen to her hair. And there we are, there's card 2. So moving on to card 3, I'm going to use a Ray stencil that I have from MFT Stamps, but you know, I think use whatever similar stencil you have at home, or you could even mock the effects of the stencil just by putting some Post-it tape around the card base and then moving them as you color in the different rays. That's another way to do it if you don't have a stencil. So I colored the whole background with the tumbled glass Distress Oxide ink, and then I'm going over the top of it with the Stormy Sky. And this time I did use Bristol Smooth cardstock just so that we could get a better blend than we did on the Neenah cardstock. So now I'm going to pull that off, and I'm going to go over the whole thing again with some tumbled glass just to blend and smooth out the edges a little bit. And then we're just going to go back with one more coating of the Stormy Sky over the top of the rays in a second. Actually, yeah, I'm not sure why I went and colored in the edges, because we're going to just cut it down anyway. But anyway, so now I'm just adding some water with a spritz bottle to make it look like there's some little bubbles and some more like light rays in the ocean. And I'm just going to heat set that well, actually not heat set, I'm just drying the page because the page was pretty wet when I was done. Now I'm doing what I said I was going to do before, which is go over everything with Stormy Sky. Now I am going to cut out 2 circles that are about the size of that circle in the middle of the page. One with the aqua cardstock and then another with the Tonic specialty paper in the kit. And I'm going to cut down our little panel with a Lawn Fawn circle stitch die, and then I'm going to use the border, the zigzag Lawn Fawn border die, and I'm going to put our panel on top of that, attach the whole thing to a card base, and then situate the 2 little circles so that they're a little bit off center on the front of the page. I put some white cardstock behind the Tonic specialty paper because it is a little flimsy, and then I popped it up on 1 layer of foam tape. I did the same with the mermaid. Then I sat her right on top, so it kind of looks like she's sitting on a bubble. I was actually thinking of going back and making them bubbles, but I was too lazy, so I just used what we had. And I'm gonna stamp the sentiment in the upper right-hand corner. It says, "Always be yourself unless you can be a mermaid." And then I'm gonna heat set it and fill in that little curl of hair that I had left behind before. Add some white highlights with a gel pen, and then some glitter to the hair, and then we're done. So I think this is it for me for the Simon Says stamp kit. I love it, but I am just short on time these days. So I hope you enjoyed these cards, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great week, everyone.